The DISC profiling system measures each of these four behavioural factors independently of one another. It does this through a questionnaire consisting of just 24 questions. Responses to this questionnaire are graded in terms of dominance, influence, steadiness, and compliance, from which we ultimately derive a separate score for each, usually expressed as a value between 0 and 100. There's a standard means of expressing these scores that makes their value stand out immediately: the DISC graph. In a DISC graph, each of the four factors is plotted in turn and bound together by connecting lines. The network of lines brings out a characteristic shape for each combination of factors, and even untrained users can quickly learn to associate different graph shapes with different patterns of behaviour. Let's take a look at a very simple example of a DISC graph. From our discussion of DISC biaxial model, you'll recall that this upper left quadrant describes behaviour that combines assertiveness and control. That is, dominant behaviour. We can imagine a person whose behaviour is dictated entirely by the kind of attitudes described here. Their style would be direct, efficient, self-motivated, independent, and so on. This type of person would map onto a DISC graph with a very high dominance score and very low scores for the other three factors. The resulting shape is so familiar to DISC users that it even has its own name. For what we know of the dominance factor, it's not surprising this shape has become known as the autocrat profile. Each of the four factors has its own graph like this, showing that factor high and all the others low, and therefore corresponding directly to a quadrant on the original biaxial model. These aren't just theoretical possibilities either. When we create graphs from real DISC questionnaires, it's not uncommon to find people with just these kinds of behaviour. Because we measure each of the four factors independently, though, there are many more possible graph shapes than just these basic four. An important part of the DISC system is a set of tools that we can use to understand the relations between the different factors, and it's in those techniques, perhaps more than any other aspect of the theory, where DISC's power lies.